Hi everyone, this is Karina Dean, and I am back with another video, and this is called More Magic. In this video, I will be code breaking the ritual of Super Bowl 50. I began this journey by taking notes, which you can find on my Facebook. This is my second round in doing these codings on my own. So I hope that you will give me some feedback and tell me what you think. Share your thoughts in the comments below. The question that I first want to answer is, why do we need to code break, or why do I need to break a code? And the reason that I've come to this, besides my own entertainment and creative outlet, is that when you understand the media working through images and sound, you also can conclude that this is about working with the subconscious. And there are vibrations coming off to us. So what we are doing here is decoding the vibrations that we are taking in as we watch the media. We are looking at some sort of messaging that is reflecting into the subconscious, and the subconscious works through images. And it also depends on the witchcraft. It depends on the person who's delivering it, what it is that they desire to portray. So when we go down to the basics of numbers, letters, coding, we come down to the 1 and the 0. And the 1 is masculine and the O is feminine, like the womb. Now, this is only a reflection of us in our basic core programming. So we all possess masculine, which is the 1, and the O, which is the womb. Feminine is receiving and taking in, and masculine is penetration. Depending on the person who is evoking or intoning the energy, they are either using their witchcraft to separate the masculine and the feminine, or to bring them together. What I do with code breaking is to not come to conclusions too quickly, to use facts and to observe patterns, and then be able to just decipher the feminine and the masculine and just go over what it is that I know. But even then, I also know that I don't know everything yet, right? Or I haven't remembered everything, or I haven't completely advanced up into the highest of myself. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. So I'm continuously working on that. So when I know my place in the whole paradigm, that also helps me to come to some conclusions. Because many don't decode and look into the information given to them, they often make a choice that they're not completely conscious of. So when we think of consciousness, that is being aware of self within the paradigm, and then the feelings of separation and wholeness, and what that conscious being wants to, intends to do. The first response of people and the media after the Super Bowl, and I just really think it's funny because the code of the word decoding is has often been used for a while now, that has to do with breaking down the information that is presented in these rituals. But only now the media is using, as you can see right here, they're using the word too. So this actually takes up a lot more space, and it's actually covering up, a lot the tradition as well. The people who actually have been doing this for a long time. Decoding is already a part of a culture. Also amazing to see how the times that we're in, what is important to us does show itself within the media, and whatever their intentions are is one thing, but it's still amazing, at least to me, to see that, wow, like now they're using this word, and now it takes up virtual space, and now this word decoding is going to be in a more massive use because they are now using it for their own intentions of what they mean. This video is called More Magic, and this is about our magic. Think of more, it is the people, melanated people, or people of the sun, because that was also one of the descriptions of us. And now when we use black, it brings us into a lower energy, and that is more associated with slavery. When you use more, it's more associated with our relationship to the sun, and this is why more magic, Ra, the sun, is the best way, I believe, to describe what it is that I'm talking about. The timing that is happening on Super Bowl 50, and we're specifically looking at Beyonce and her formation video, which is dropped the day before on Saturday, February the 6th. And then she performs in the Super Bowl 50 on Sunday, February the 7th. So the timing of this is very important, and it's actually very important to those who understand energy vibration, and they're choosing when to use and take part in any sort of action at the time that the energy would be at its heightened, or when it's potent. So use of the cosmos and numerology, this even in our own lives we can use and provide ourselves with better timing on when we want certain things to manifest, because you're tapping into the energy, and when you know what's happening, you can participate in it. We also think of the word magic, and when it's used without the K, it's more of the tricks, like it's more of taking the rabbit out of the hat. It's more superficial and more for entertainment. Right? When we use magic with a K, now that taps into the origins of evoking energy and spirits. So when we think of the hype and the popularity of black girl magic, it naturally brings you into a one-dimensional thinking, because using the words black is about our ties to slavery, and then using magic without the K is the tricks and the entertainment. That's how you decode black girl magic. So I say more magic, or more womb magic, because that is more enriched and it has a deeper sense of discovery and experience. So a lot of people might naturally think that this is like really simple or analyzing it too far, but this is the basics of energy vibration. And the more that we educate ourselves and also take it in and receive it, we are tapping into our ancestry and the true nature of why it is that we look and are and who we are. February the 6th, Venus and Pluto were in conjunction at 16 degrees. And Venus represents the female, the feminine. Venus represents the materials that the feminine require, right? She also represents the value and worth, and also money. So when we think of money, money is really energy, and Venus represents the energy that we attract when it comes to our value and our worth. Venus conjuncts Pluto. Now Venus works more on the basis of the personality, it's more closer to us, so it actually affects us more as it moves. You could feel Venus when it moves, compared to Pluto, which is a more generational planet. And Pluto is about death and rebirth. Pluto's about sexuality in a lot of sense, because sex is correlated with death and rebirth. And Pluto is about regeneration. So it has the concepts of karma, of things coming back, which is that concept of death and rebirth. And Pluto rules over Scorpio. So that's where we get the correlations of sexuality. But very often we only see sexuality in its physical sense. Venus represents the pleasures of the beast, of the body. Venus controls or is interlocked with Taurus, which is the bull. So Taurus represents the senses and the feels and the pleasures. So when it's about sexuality, that's actually more Venus related. And then when we think about Pluto and sexuality, we're looking at the cycle of generations and how, you know, when we have physical intercourse and we create a baby, and how that baby is us and it moves its lifetime and then has children and then moves in and they move in their lifetime. And so that's a piece of us, of ourselves through generations. So that is the concept of Pluto. So all of that to say that Venus and Pluto coming in at this one time together, right? So that's a generational planet meeting a closer planet coming together, which means that it's not very often. And using this power at 16 degrees, which also has a vibration, to bring together an energy that is potent for any sort of messaging that you might want to use it for. But you can also use this energy to portray something or to express yourself in a way. Venus also has to do with creation. Sexuality has to do with creation. So when you understand the energies, you can manifest if you desire or to your desire. And this is the real magic. We look at Beyonce. Beyonce's chart, Beyonce's natal chart is a full stellium in Libra. So she's known to be a Virgo, but she's very, very heavy set in Libra, which also rules over Venus. So this is also Beyonce, her chart correlating with the transits of today and using this energy, right? So this has a lot to do with her Libra stellium. And then Libra in itself represents duality, two sides, right? And balance. And Libras are the agents of balance, or Libras can be imbalanced and be the agents of imbalance. So again, we look at the concept of division and bringing together wholeness. And what is the intentions behind dropping this video and the song at this very time? Beyonce drops Formation on Saturday, February the 6th. And that is naturally coded as Saturn. That is a Saturn day. And we're also going to get more into that in a little bit, but I just want to highlight that. And then February the 6th, which is February the second month of the year, on Saturday the 6th. I want to keep us focused right now on 2 and 6. Now, when we think of 2 and 6, we also think of that there's 26 letters in the alphabet. And so in numerology, specifically Pythagorean, Z would represent 26. And this will also be important in a little bit, but we want to just take all of these little pieces, and they may be very basic at first, but we're going to see how they're symbols, and we're going to see patterns here. And I'm going to help you and walk you through it. So let's go down into the deep abyss. The video that I'm presenting today, I'm evoking this energy to challenge the inner polarity, the inner need to choose a side or not. And we're going to dance between both of them and see how there are various perspectives. We see first that the witch casts her spell. And the images presented here are the patterns that I see of the twin pillars. Now, there is a viewpoint of the twin pillars being a political policy put out in the height of the Cold War. And people who understand the twin pillars and see this pattern might have that perspective. right? But then also people of the more spiritual and esoteric point of view might see this as the polarity, or the doorway, or the passageway, the active and passive, or Horus and Set, the two paths. In numerology, the twin pillars are the spiritual channel, but also ruled by one and one, which is the individual being the spiritual channel. Think of the twin towers, right? Or the how the twin towers were male and female. That's another pattern of the one and the womb, or the masculine versus the feminine, and that also can be the portrayal of the twin pillars. And you'll see in this image here that Beyonce holds up her Saturn fingers, right? And they are mirroring each other, right? And then you see the twin pillars still behind her. So, you know, a lot of people just think of, you know, throwing up the bird, so like, fuck you. So that could be an image, you know, that could be a message as well. But also it represents the twin pillars. So it could be the duality. It could be the spiritual channel. Beyonce could be saying that she is the spiritual channel, right? Or that she is going through a channel. It's also possibly the active and the passive, right? Again, thinking of the twin pillars, or the feminine and the masculine. We could also think of that in her messaging and what it is that she is trying to say in just this image alone. So she starts out the video with, y'all haters corny with that Illuminati mess. And that alone is such a powerful statement. Beyonce knows how to start a show, right? So what is in this line talks about where we are in the paradigm of time. First of all, it provokes a perspective that doesn't believe in the Illuminati, or doesn't really want to even dive into that. Kind of sees it as corny, and that's that natural one-dimension perspective. They won't investigate any further. And that line, taken just as it is saying, okay, yeah, she agrees with me, right? I am taking that in as, yes, the concept of the Illuminati is corny and it's stupid. But then Beyonce also provokes the people who have been studying this for lifetimes, and people who have been concluding or deciphering if there is a 1%, and if they do control most of the world. So we look at the internal state of humanity, and we could see that separation automatically from this first line. We look at the fact that Illuminati, specifically from this artist, has not been mentioned. And when it is first mentioned, it has this concept of conversation. Then we also, those who study time and cycle of time, would understand that this is only proof in the media that we are in this time of the awakening and the golden age. It's not on this massive scale, and now it is due to the channel of this artist. So that line is very important. But even more so, those who study signs and symbolism continues to see that within this video. And so it's also a provoking of what is the Illuminati? Who is it? Is she teasing? You know, any sort of weak spot that we might feel in ourselves about our work when we study the Illuminati, or what that really is. Or for those who know that it's even more so the times and the signs of the times, that we can all choose to be illuminated. So when she says she rocks his rock necklaces, right? And we think of that sound and that message being brought into us, and we look at the image that she's presenting to us of Beyonce in this beautiful necklace, and then there's a pendant at the bottom, which, as closely as I can zoom in, I still can't decipher what it is. If anybody does know what it is, please let me know. But as she says that, we see this image of her rocking this beautiful neck piece, and it's striking in that sense. And then my daddy, Alabama, Mama, Louisiana, she's telling you about herself. There is patterns of Bama throughout this entire video. If we cut forward to images of the basketball team, they have Bama on their jersey. Okay, so we also have the sense of the culture of New Orleans, because she asks at the top, you hear this voice, very strong voice come and says, what happened after New Orleans? As images of the masquerade, people behind her in masks. She shows these images of the masquerade, and I portray this as there is something hidden, and Beyonce is all about the hidden. Her chart is heavy stellium in Libra in the 12th house, so a lot of activity is about the subconscious. Libra, representing the 12th house, is the stability or instability of the subconscious or of the mental plane. 12th house also represents karma, and it also represents that past life. That's stellium in Libra. So when we go back to the masquerade, that's kind of what I see when she's standing there with all the people behind her. It gives me that sense of Louisiana, but it also gives me that sense of her 12th house and like all of the planetary energies that are layered here in the messaging of her art or of her music or of this video. What I have deciphered is that it speaks to different levels of people. Black Lives Matter, the civil rights protests, and the shootings is going to be presented here. And depending on where you are filtering from, depends on what it is that you feel about it. People who feel strongly about the Black Lives Matter protest, there are people who really want this to be taken care of, and they're saying to stop shooting us, stop killing our children. Also, if one is whole, would see other perspectives. So there are some people who see this as race war, or some people who are who don't quite see the truth in the way that these shootings were presented, and they're trying to say that the whole thing is a masquerade. When they see the shootings of the young black boy and the young kid dancing in front of the police, can also evoke, right? They see the cross, and that's people to say, well, associated it's not with just Jesus about dying the Black Lives Matter movement. And then we have about the preacher consciousness and the image of the and preacher, learning about why it is that Black Lives Matter or movement actually they're more older women, is only one-dimensional in its dressed view and thinking. They're old, like they look like Easter Sunday. Now the key here or the struggle is to choose, but participating and praising people to just embrace them all, embrace the perspectives of them all. If you desire to be whole or to feel united, but if you don't, then you will desire to separate. We also have images that speak to Christianity. It speaks to Christianity because those who are of the Christian faith and base will see the cross . Picture with Beyonce and the image of Beyonce and the women in white, we see the cross behind the women. So any Christian who only sees their own perspective and doesn't investigate any further than the cross, right? From the concepts of levels of perspective and filters, they will only associate that with what they know. I'm going to take an even individual tie to Christianity in the fact that the video is dropped on February the 6th, right? And Christians who are into the revelation and understand this timing, right? Because we have separation of Christians, those who don't want to see the time and those who think that this is a very specific time. This is separation within separation. Revelation 6:2, which is the mirror or reflection of 2/6, February the 6th, or the 26th letter, which is the Z. Revelation 6:2 says, and I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And when you look at Beyonce in the image with the women around her, she's in all white and she has a bow on her, and it hints to the Christian perspective of the pale white horse. Later on in the video, you see a young kid in the dressing of the Native American shawl, like the dressing on the back of him. And so that image flashes by so fast, but when you freeze it, you'll see that there's a pale white horse on the young kid's t-shirt. So here are connections to Christianity. As we know, and anybody else who studies symbolism knows, that that cross and that X has layers of interpretations, and that's Jesus dying on the cross. But even so, we got to look at how Beyonce portrays the arms spread out, represent Jesus with his arms spread out on the cross. Got to go back now and look at the same images. We got to look at the same images, but this time from this perspective of the conscious movement. Whether people of different groups want to acknowledge it or not, there is a growth of the conscious movement, right? So when you are whole and you take that in and you witness that that is spreading too at this time, then you would see that the Christian and the moor symbolism is being portrayed at the same time, and those who identify with deciding on whatever group, right? Those who identify with whichever group they identify will see different things while all are looking at the same image. She shows in her images the man with the fez hat, the more the color, like that wine color that is associated with the Moors. And that man actually changes his hands at different times. His hand and the details in that should be definitely looked at. And there is a time where he hooks his thumb, right? So he has his hand over one hand, right? So the man with the fez hat has his right hand over his left, which represents right over left. And then the men on the other side of her have their left on top of their right, which is left over right. But the man with the hat, he also straightens his hand, right, and shows the fingers, which represents 5, depending on how many fingers he's showing. His hand changes. And then he also hooks his hand, almost like an L or a J. Look at the child again. We go back to the child with his arms out in front of the police. The police have their arms up. And this is all also symbolism. She says in her video, mix Negro with Creole, Texas, Bama. And there we see Bama again, like the Bamas on the jerseys, or like she said, my daddy, Alabama. When it comes to colorism, for those who feel that the Creole, the lighter skin, and then the darker skin, and that is, whether you want to accept it or not, that is an experience, a perspective that currently resides in our culture, in our paradigm, is the issue with colorism and light versus dark skin. And you see her child up in the lighter Creole concept of Creole with the two young girls and way darker skin. Also the story of the Creole and the mix of the Irish women coming in, and the concepts of how one group of women were treated versus the other. So we're looking at that conflict there being presented to you. Also think of the images of hair, and we see the afros, and we get really excited because we can come from the perspective that the hair movement has taken precedence now. Now the hair movement's going on since early 2000, but now it's come in full bloom, and you can't deny that many women who have gone decades not knowing their hair texture and learning their hair texture are now going natural. If you're not aware of it, then you don't see these images. You're not provoked or evoked by these images. But then she shows the weaves. So when she goes into the beauty store, there's nothing else to be shown, right? When you go to a beauty store, you see all of the products, hair products, accessories, but she only focuses on the beauty store with the weaves and the different color weaves. So it, depending on what perspective you're coming from, you could feel a part of that rainbow child movement on changing your hair color to blue and like to different colors. You could also experience the fact that a lot of women are conflicted in going natural or staying straight hair, or going natural with weave on, which is the separatism of learning about your hair versus still hiding under a weave. Some females don't feel that they're hiding, they feel that they're freedom, so it's free to do whatever they want with their hair. It's their hair, they can do whatever they want. And so this brings about a lot of separatism, because even in the dancers that are wearing their hair afro, one can't tell if they are actually wearing weave or if they're actually natural from the perspective. I ask, who is Bae? I always bring that up when I talk to people about Beyonce, because Bae is a moor term, and a lot of people who have the perspective of loving Beyonce don't look at the messaging that she's actually trying to say about who she thinks and knows that she is. When she asks what happened in New Orleans, depending on the perspective you come from, you may conclude that it's just about how the president and the police at that time, how they failed to help those people in need. How they failed to help those people in need. And so that provokes a political standpoint and a sense of despair and hope that we are forgotten. We are the forgotten ones. And for those who choose that perspective, that is their individual choice. But I also look at Bae. I look at the images that she's showing me, and I feel conflict in just choosing just the one-dimensional story of what happened in Katrina. Because when we look at the culture of New Orleans, right, and when we look at Beyonce on the car, and as the water rises or the car sinks, we are seeing also the concept of moor, right? And when we think of moor, we think of dark melanated people, but it can also be perceived as land. So when we see the car sinking and the water rising, right, that hints to issues or messages that we know in today's time that has to do with land. So I feel that this provokes gentrification. And I'll tell you right now that when we think of the Flint case, right, the issue with the water, and how that water, right, the issue with the water is drowning out the people, that they may have to wait and be possibly drowning, right, sitting on the political platform, waiting on the political figures of this world to care and to come and to save them, or moving from that land into different territory, and then seeing that process of a large amount of people moving out of land. So going back to Bay, right, the concept of moor, and then the concept of land, we can see the patterns of situations and events like Flint, Michigan, and events like Katrina, where the people had to leave that area because of the water's ties and correlations, all the way always down to the feminine concept in which the water is rising, so maybe the divine feminine is also rising. Depending what perspective you come from, also see the water as the cleansing, right? So when she asks what happened to New Orleans, you could also perceive the fact that what happened in New Orleans was the washing away of a culture and a spirituality that was un-Christian related. She says, Mama, Louisiana, tying herself into the culture of the mystics. As ladies, let's get information, the word information. And I feel like that could be perceived because only when you have this information, then you could see the various perspectives that could play out when viewing this sort of content. When we look at Katrina, the death toll was 1836, right? It's split up between Louisiana, 1577 was the death toll, and Mississippi was 238, bringing it all together as 1836. When you break down 18 and 36, 1 and 8 is 9, 3 and 6 are 9. Add them together, that's 18. And then when you reduce 18, it's 9. The day that the Super Bowl was presented was 2/7/2016, which is February the 7th, 2016. So 2 plus 7 was 9. 2016 reduces to 9. We're in a universal 9 year. So when we add that together, it again is the same coding result as the death toll of Katrina. A lady actually bring to my attention, she gave me more information about the fact that in this vision of Beyonce surrounded by these black men suitors, right, with the man with the moor hat, fez hat, the one on the left side of her appears to be Baron Samedi. And he's also known as Baron Saturday because Samedi is, in French, the same word for Saturday. And he is Lord of the LOA or Loa, which also makes me just think of Lord. But he is the caricature of the underworld. And he's often portrayed with a skeleton on his face, like a skeleton drawn out on his face, and a top hat and a suit on with either a skeleton on his, like, drawn on his body, or like just a three-piece suit. To even add that he was destroyed by Zeus with a thunderbolt. And at the end of her video, at the end, the last thing she says is, "Girl, I hear something. Thunder. Golly, this is that water boy, oh Lord." Baron Samedi was the medicine man. He was the medicine man because he took the blood of Medusa. And he was a part of this culture, this Haitian voodoo African spirituality culture, and the lord of the underworld, helping to heal others to pass through or heal those who are approaching death. Culture of this place, of New Orleans, we feel like, you know, we feel that culture of like the seafood and the food and the tastes. And she says red lobster, and you could look even deeper and see that red lobster is correlated to the food, right? But red lobster itself, the word itself, could be a coding. When you gematria, or when I gematria red lobster, I actually come to the rebellion of Korah, which is at 436 in Jewish gematria. And 436 is 13, right? Which is very, very important number as well, which represents the destruction or the destroyer. 13 is often like the signs of like a hidden system or something that is not being seen as well. But it kind of like comes in and destroys it all. Where 12 is the sacrifice. And when we think of the 12 months, the 12 disciples, right? We think of Jesus again. We think of the 12 signs. They're all subject to the fact that Ophiuchus even is a 13th sign. So there's actually 13 signs. There's actually not 12 tribes of Israel, right? When we think of the rebellion of Korah, but 13. When we think of anything that has correlation to 12 and 13, 12 typically represents what we currently know it as, and 13 is often the hidden wisdom or the serpent wisdom that comes in and destroys what it is that we know. So when she says red lobster, you can dive all the way into that gematria. Having Baron Samedi there was really interesting, but then what it drew me to conclude as I got this more information about more magic is that the portrayal of Beyonce also be portraying Maman Brigitte. And Maman Brigitte is the wife of Baron Samedi. And when you see Beyonce in the dress and the necklace, right, and the hat, she portrays the caricature of how Maman Brigitte is often portrayed as well. she's often tied to Saint Bride, which is an Ireland version of this as well. So when we think of Saint Bride and I see Beyonce in the white dress with all of the women, I see the merging of Maman Brigitte, that caricature, and Saint Bride coming together. It actually hints to me that she is the same person, right? So that mixes the Creole with, I guess, the Negro or the supposed Moor, which is really is either, are they separate or are they the same? Beyonce is in all black versus when she is in all white. She's Maman Brigitte or she is Saint Bride. She is both, but in duality. The question of goddess or saint comes up into question. And I feel like this is Beyonce's inner conflict. Evoking the spirits with her hands, right? Or intoning the spirits with her hands, like Maman Brigitte did, to protect the graves. Maman Brigitte used the Veve, V-E-V-E, to invoke spirits and help lead the dead to afterlife as well, as she's the wife, or she's married to Baron Samedi. Maman Brigitte also portrays and is also connected to Isis. And when you see the big necklace around Beyonce, you know, we think of the way that Isis is portrayed, and she also has that necklace. Releasing this video on Saturday, right? And evoking this caricature of the Lord of the Underworld, or the spirit of the Lord of the Underworld, who is married to Madame Brigitte, who uses her Veve, V-E-V-E, to evoke the dead spirits or to protect the grave sites that are marked by crosses. Veve, which is the V, right? That V is also the Roman numeral for 5. And that leads us right into Superbowl 50. Symbolism that is within the Veve of Madame Brigitte. And we also see that the 5 is also related and interlocked to Mercury, which is the communication planet. And also Mercury rules over media, right? Then we can also look at the 5 as the serpent, the S, 5 and S, both look like the serpent. And then when you look at 50, the O is the womb. So we look at the serpent and the womb, or the woman, right? Or the serpent using the woman. Like when we think of the Bible, and the woman is talking to the serpent, and the 5 being the snake is like the Kundalini, the snake that you see very often evoking that sexual spirit and that higher enlightenment, igniting and harvesting this energy. And the pentagram is often perceived as a symbol that does this as well. Those who have who see just the X can also see the cross of the Malcolm X Panthers and the Black Panthers, and that actually is what most of society is actually going, the majority of society is going to take up right away. Black Panther movement. The X can be seen as the symbol of division, because it's the tension pulled by one line on top of the tension pulled by the other line. So when you look at the astrology chart, specifically the Western chart, it's a circle and it has an X in it, and astrologers interpret the opposition from one to another as tension, pulling. And so oppositions are usually marked in red, meaning that there is a lesson of tension to be taught here. Also this way, tension coming from the sides as well. So the X can be seen as being pulled, the tension and the division within the circle. When you turn the X on its side, it resembles the top of a cross, It also looks like the Ankh in the Venus sign without the O on top, but the O connected is still that concept of X and O. And in fact, Beyonce has a song called XO. We're looking at how the V is used, or the Roman numeral 5 is used in our everyday language. Vampirism has to do with taking energy or harvesting of energy. And when you look at the 5 looks like something is taking it in. So she shows an X in her performance, but she also shows the formation of the arrow, and she shows the line going into the arrow, right? The line going into the V. That's what an arrow could also look like. So some people could see it as an arrow, but some people could also see it as the V taking in the line, which is the womb taking in that energy. Some people could also see it as the arrow pointing down as in down to the root chakra, or down into the earth, or bringing down the vibration, or striking down, right? The arrows also like the Y, which represents the X and the Y inverted. Going back to the X, when you look at the X could represent 2 arrows looking at one another, right? Just like how the V takes in for the Y, now the V is on its side, and it is 2 arrows pointing towards one another, in which you could perceive it as tension. Also perceive it as 2 sevens, like in more symbolism. The sevens are pointing away from one another. And in Beyonce's video for 7-11, she says 7 twice, 7 twice. Man, it feels like rolling dice. 7 twice, 7 twice, as in 2 sevens. And the 7-11 video is 7 and 2, right? Which is 7, 11, 11 reduced down to 2. And the 7-11 is AD, is when the Moors moved up into Europe. So again, there's a correlation to the Moor history, but there's also correlation to the sacred numbers of 7 twice, or 7-11. So it could be 7 in its duality, or 7 as a spiritual channel. And don't forget that 2/7 is the day that this Super Bowl event is happening, February the 7th. You could also think of the 27 Club of celebrities who have lost their lives at age 27. And this correlates with not only the 2 and the 7, but the concepts of death and evoking death. Because the 27 is a pattern that seems to correlate with our own concepts of idols or celebrities losing their life, and there's a strong amount of people who fall into that group. Remembering the concepts of Baron Samedi and Brigitte Maman, in which they're evoking the death spirit. So again, we go back to the beginning of this video where I'm talking about Venus and Pluto, and we're looking at the heart and the feminine and the woman and the concepts of death and regeneration, death and rebirth, evoking spirits or energies back to life. And when we are all participating in this viewing at the same time, we are all collectively also generating that vibration. All I want to bring to the table is the vibration that is coming out at us, and if we take that in, if we become the V taking in these messages, right? If we become the wound that the serpent is using, then what is it that we are intending? The rhythms even of this work, the rhythms of music, have that sense of repetition and movement that keeps it moving even within us. That's what's really beautiful about music and how it works, is that the more that you sing it or more that you repeat it, the more that it becomes within memory and you embody it. So every piece of music that you take in, you also want to consider the fact that you are the V to that information, and you are taking in those vibrations and repeating them almost in that rhythmic form that is being presented to you. And we see all of this symbolism. And when she says, ladies get in formation, right? Now we can look at the way that is actually written as well, because I already played with the idea of information, but she separates information. She separates that word and she says in formation. And that shows you also how the wordplay is a vibrational energy play. And when she says, let's get in formation, what is the formation that she desires us to get into? Whomever is not in tune with self might fall for something that they, or agree with something, or choose something that they actually don't want to participate in. And this is why decoding is so much fun, but also essential in breaking down the conditioning of the vibrations that we continue to be in the cycle of. And we can be the 9, we can break the cycles when we're able to decipher and put together our own concepts, and then still choose or not choose. So we come down to the score of the game, right? And we see that it is 10-24. And this is the final pattern that I see, in which the 10 is the 1 and the 0, right? The masculine and the feminine. 2, which in itself is the channel, 2 or 11. So 10-24. And we see here that 2 and 4 broken down is and reduced is 6, which again is Venus. When you put 6 into 24, when you put 6 into 24, you get 3, right? So we're looking at the concepts of the Trinity. Like when you think of Beyonce, a friend of mine helped me to conclude, like Beyonce and her group, Destiny's Child, kind of represents that Trinity. And so when you think of the 666, protons, neutrons, and electrons, which is also known as the X. 24 is the X, right? It's because it is the 24th letter of the alphabet. 24 is X, and XXX is what we often see, right? Those 3 X, that is 6 going into 24 3 times. 3. So that is the protons, neutrons, electrons, which is the beast or the body, which is what Venus represents as the bull. What we have here is a score that can be determined without any sort of athleticism. When you look at Superbowl 50, it's the serpent and the womb, and in the logo, it's like the phallus, or it's the 1, and then you've got the football at the top, which kind of resembles the eye, as in the corny ass Illuminati. Especially at this point in time, it's no longer just a secret group, right? It's many groups, in fact, but it's no longer just a secret anymore. Now it is now out in the open that we know it to be at least a term that is referencing something, and therefore it has a life, it has a body, it's its own beast. I feel like this is very much so themed in the feminine and looking to evoke some sort of spirit of the feminine, and we can naturally feel like that is separate from us, specifically men. But when we all see that we are all one, we all possess the masculine and feminine within all of us. So the spirit that is being evoked is also within us. So this is my first video decoding the moor womb magic in the Beyonce formation video, as well as in Super Bowl 50. And I really do enjoy sharing my notes and getting more information from people. So I look forward to doing more of these and to helping us see all of the hidden messages in the media that's presented to us so that we can make more conscious choices. So this is Karina Dean, and I'll see you in the next one. Signing off.